1972, rocket pioneer, talks about UFOs. One of the great pioneers in astronautics is Dr. Hermann Oberth. In 1955, Oberth was invited by Dr. Wemher von Braun to go to the United States, where he worked on rockets with the Army Ballistic Missile Agency and later NASA at the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center. Oberth's statements on the UFO question have always been unequivocal, and he advised that he is convinced UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin. In the following statement, he elaborated on his hypothesis for UFO propulsion. Today, we cannot produce machines that fly as UFOs do. They are flying by means of artificial fields of gravity. This would explain the sudden changes of directions. This hypothesis would also explain the piling up of these disks into cylindrical or cigar-shaped motherships upon leaving the Earth, because in this fashion, only one field of gravity would be required for all disks. They produce high-tension electric charges in order to push the air out of their path, and strong magnetic fields to influence the ionized air at higher altitudes. This would explain their luminosity. Secondly, it would explain the noiselessness of UFO flight. Finally, this assumption also explains the strong electrical and magnetic effects, sometimes, but not always, observed in the vicinity of UFOs. Earlier, Dr. Oberth hinted that there had been actual contact with the UFOs at a scientific level. We cannot take the credit for our excellent advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped, he is quoted as having said. When asked by whom, he replied, the people of other worlds. There are persistent rumors that the U.S. is even test-flown a few advanced vehicles based on information allegedly acquired as a result of contact with extraterrestrials in the study of grounded UFOs. In 1959, Dr. Wemher von Braun, another great space pioneer, made an intriguing statement reported in Germany. Referring to the deflection from orbit of the U.S. Juno 2 rocket, he stated, "We find ourselves faced by powers which are far stronger than we had hitherto assumed, and whose base is at present unknown to us. More I cannot say at present. We are now engaged in entering into closer contact with those powers, and in 6 or 9 months' time, it may be possible to speak with more precision on the matter." There has been nothing further published on the matter. As Dr. Robert Sarbacher has commented, von Braun was probably involved in the recoveries of crashed UFOs in the late 1940s, and it is my opinion that he was constrained from elaborating on the subject, owing to the security oath that he must have been subject to. We cannot substantiate this information that was received from a reliable source, that top-secret contacts have been made by extraterrestrials with selected scientists in the space program. It must be admitted, though, that von Braun's statement comes close to corroborating this. What else could he have meant when he said, "We are now engaged in entering into closer contact with those powers"? The Soviets. Dr. James McDonald, senior physicist at the Institute of Atmospheric Physics and professor in the Department of Meteorology at the University of Arizona, who committed suicide in unusual circumstances in 1971, tried unsuccessfully to persuade NASA to take on primary responsibility for UFO investigations. He reported in 1967, "Curiously, I have said this both in NASA and fairly widely reported public discussions before scientific colleagues, yet the response from NASA has been nil. I've been attempting to get a small group within NASA to undertake a study group approach to the available published effort. Seems to have generated no response. I realize, of course, that there may be semi-political considerations that make it awkward for NASA to fish in these waters at present, but if this is what is holding up serious scientific attention to the UFO problem at NASA, this is all the more reason Congress had better take a good hard look at the problem and reshuffle the deck. It has been learned from a number of unquotable sources that the Air Force has long wished to get rid of the burden of the troublesome UFO problem and has twice tried to peddle it to NASA without success. While McDonald recognized that there were semi-political considerations affecting NASA's reluctance to become publicly involved in UFO investigations, he failed to perceive that UFOs are more an intelligence problem than a scientific one. He was simply unaware of the true extent of NASA's secret involvement. Resources above top secret. Timothy Good, 1988. My take: nobody seems to take into account when even mainstream rocket scientists of that time period admit that UFOs are real and are extraterrestrial.